What's up, y'all? Thanks for joining me out in the shop today. So today's project is something I've been doing. I've done a couple of these for some friends of mine. A buddy of mine asked me to make him a wind reflector thing to go around campfires wherever he's out camping. I do a lot of camping, and so he knows I kind of work with metal and I can kind of fabricate stuff. So he asked me to make him something to deflect the wind from campfires and stuff. So I kind of had an idea. I figured I'd just make it out of aluminum so it'd be light and fold up and collapsible. And so I made one for him, and he really liked it, posted a couple pictures on Facebook. And so another friend of mine reached out and said they wanted one. And when we were out at this camping trip just this last weekend, I delivered that second one to my buddy, and a bunch of other people saw it and they really liked it. And so there seems to be some interest for it. There seems to be a bunch of people that seem like it'd be a pretty fun thing to do or to have, a neat product to have. And so it's relatively simple. You do have to kind of be particular, I guess, and kind of be specific on your cuts and where you drill your holes and stuff. But the process itself is not terribly complicated. It's a little bit time consuming. But it's something that pretty much anybody could do with what you'll see. I have basically, it's kind of some basic tools. It doesn't require anything special, just requires some time and just kind of paying attention to kind of what you're doing a little bit. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd make a video just showing you how I make these. So this is just an aluminum reflector. I'll put a picture in here that shows what one of the ones that I made so far. I'll put a picture in there to kind of show you that. And then like I said, y'all just hang out with me and kind of see what I do, and we'll make some wind deflectors for campfires. What do you say? So as you saw from the picture that I posted, it's basically just 4 pieces of aluminum sheet metal that have been cut to shape and attached with hinges. And so this is what we start with. This is just a piece of aluminum sheet metal. This is 0.090 thickness. This was a 4x12 sheet or 4x10 sheet, and it's already had one set cut from it. And so we're making another one today. We're gonna make, this one is gonna be each panel is gonna be 24 inches by 20 inches. So the great thing about 24 inches is that is exactly half of a 4x8 sheet. So we'll do one cut down this way, and then we're going to do a cut this way and then a cut this way. So I'm going to start with this cut, and all I'm using is a circular saw, handheld circular saw. And I don't know if you can see there very closely, but this is just a carbide tipped metal cutting blade. So it cuts through this pretty straight. Now, one of the things that I do to try and get as straight a cut and as square a cut as possible is, obviously I've got some tape down, because since I'm making this for somebody else, I want it to be nice and clean and not have scratches and stuff on it. But if I was making it for myself, I wouldn't care. I would just make my mark and cut it and scratch it all up, because it's going to get scratched up riding around in a off-road vehicle and going camping anyways. But for somebody else, I'm going to make it nice and clean. But all I did was I took a 4-foot long piece of wood and lined it up with the marks that I have down here, clamped it to the piece, and there's actually as you can see, another piece of plywood underneath here. So I just got it clamped down. So this is my guide that I'll line up against the circular saw here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let y'all watch me. I'm gonna cut this section, then I'm gonna mark off and cut this section or this line, and then I'll mark off and I'll cut that one. Just saw me do the 4 cuts for the 4 panels. This is obviously what you're left with. You're left with, a rectangular shaped piece of aluminum. As you can see, at least I hope you can see, the cuts are pretty straight. That carbide tipped metal bit on a circular saw does a pretty good job. Obviously you got to go back and clean them up, but with a good guide, I mean, you can see you get a good straight clean cut. Doesn't leave it real jagged. It's not too terrible. One of the things I like to do, because obviously when you buy a piece of sheet metal, it comes with these nice clean factory edges. So I like to, when I'm getting ready to start the notching and stuff to actually make it to where you can attach them to each other, I like to line my factory edges up, as many of them as I can, with the other factory edge there.
Oh, gravity works.
Try not to drop stuff. When you put all your heavy material on one end of the of a board, it's gonna fall over. Just in case y'all didn't know that. Now that we got our 4 pieces, our 4 panels cut out, the next step is to notch them. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut a notch out of the bottom, and then we'll get to what would be considered probably the most specialty tool, and that is a metal hole saw. One of the things that I find to be probably the most useful when I'm making these is once you get the panels cut out to their rough shape, in order to try and make sure they always line up, I basically get to a point where what I end up doing is I end up clamping them together, and once I clamp them, you get them all squared up and nice and true. Once I clamp them together, they are always clamped with at least 2 clamps at all times. So even if I got to move around and reposition it, I clamp it to the table, I will clamp it with other clamps and then move it around so that these pieces always stay in orientation together. That way, if I'm cutting, the notch out of the bottom, I don't want one notch to have, a foot that wide and the next notch to have a foot, a little bit too wide, because then when it's all folded up, you'll see where it doesn't line up. So I try to make sure I keep them all clamped together. That way they always line up. So I've marked off where I'm going to cut the feet. Lines right there. So I'm going to cut out this area right here. The thing that I find, the trick I find to be the easiest, is if I drill a hole, just a normal, drill bit right here, and of course right here in the corners, then I can just cut this straight line up to that hole, cut this line up to that hole, and then the only real tricky part is just using my angle grinder to cut here. So if you've never drilled any holes, which, if you're doing this in your DIY, I'm sure you have, but get you one of these things. This is one of those spring-loaded punches, so you can do like this, press down, and it'll do it a couple times, and you can see, makes a nice little perfect little mark in there, so you can stick your drill bit. So I'm going to pick, I usually try and go with a pretty decent sized drill bit, so I think I'm gonna probably do, I can't remember what I used last time, but I think it was like a 1/2 inch drill bit. So I'll offset the punch so that it's down here, so that the outside bits of outside edges of the drill bit line up with these 2 lines, and that'll give this a nice rounded corner. And then I can just, of course, cut these lines up to there, and then use my angle grinder to cut across there. So I'll mark that off and then start drilling the holes. Like I mentioned, I am going to use a 1/2 inch drill bit, so I'm going to line this up, mark my holes, drill some holes in there, and then I can start to plan out the cutting of the notches out and stuff here. So as you can see, I got my holes drilled all the way through. Actually got a little overlap on that side. Almost nailed this side perfect, but got my holes drilled all the way through all 4 of those. If you don't know, because I didn't know until I learned the lesson the hard way, when you're drilling through metal, drill slow with plenty of pressure, but don't drill fast. You'll burn your drill bits, and then you got to go buy new drill bits. So this is the hole saw, the metal hole saw that I use for creating the holes for the handle. I just bought this at Harbor Freight. I think it was a Milwaukee, maybe. I don't even remember now. But I use a 1 3/4. I think you could probably even do a 1 1/2. I just happen to have a 1 3/4, so that's what I use. But I think a 1 1/2 would probably even be. Honestly, I think 1 1/2 would probably be better. But like I said, I had a 1 3/4, so that's the one I use. And then, as you can see down here, all I'm gonna do is basically I'm gonna figure out where I want my handle to be, and I'm just gonna drill a hole there, and drill a hole there. And then I'll cut out the middle section, and that'll make my handle. got my my 2 holes drilled. So then all I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna cut, basically with my angle grinder, I'm gonna cut the center section of the handle out, and then that'll be where the handle goes. Now it's time to make some cuts for the handles and the little footprint area. So I'm just gonna cut out the handles here. Just gonna use my 4.5-inch grinder with a cut-off disc. Always wear your hearing protection. Trust me, you don't want to be deaf like me. There you go. Still a little hot, but now you have a handle for gripping. As you can see, we got the little foot area cutouts done. So this is all of the cutting we need to do. Now we're just going to go through and clean up all the edges. For now, let me get all these edges cleaned up. This is going to take me a good bit, so I'll probably time lapse the first one, and then I won't make y'all watch me do any more. But basically, I'm just gonna take my 4.5-inch grinder, and I'm gonna throw a flat disc on it. So I'll just throw, a flat disc. Do it this way so you can see it. Throw a flat disc on there, and then just go around and clean up all the edges, get them all cleaned up and nice and soft and round and smooth, and then we'll get to the tricky part of the hinges, and I'll explain kind of what to do from there. All right, well, there you go. That is a cleaned, cut, prepped panel. So all we gotta do now is do that exact same thing 3 more times. And then the fun part, the part I actually dread the most, and that is the hinges. Okay, this is the method I'm gonna go with this time. It's a little bit different, like I said, than what I've done in the past, but I think it's probably gonna work out a little bit better. So here's what we've got here. Obviously, got my 2 panels. I've made sure that they are orientated correctly so that they're gonna be folding together. My hinge is gonna go right here in the middle. So what I did in order to sort of get the spacing is, I just happen to have some, some kind of machined little metal pieces, but basically what you need to find is just something kind of long that's got a, sort of a machined flat surface, just something that you can use to space this out correctly. And that space, grab my tape measure here, based on the hinge. So if this is our open hinge, I would say in order to make sure or guarantee you've got enough gap between, I think realistically we're probably looking at about 3/8 of an inch of gap. And this right here is, I don't know how well you can see that, but there we go, we'll do this. This gap right here is 3/8 of an inch. So I got lucky. I had something. You might have to go and find buy a piece of 3/8 inch metal so that you can, put it in here to make sure you've got your 2 pieces perfectly squared together. But like I said, so I've got these 2 pieces lined up as best I can and made sure they're completely squished together. Oh, wait, hold on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's do it over here. I am going to clamp these down to the table. That way come on. That way I know that once I get them into position, oh, sorry y'all. Didn't mean to bang y'all with a clamp there. But we're gonna clamp these to my workspace. All right, now Make sure our gap is still good. Our gap is still good. All right, now we can move these out of the way. So as you can see, I'll get these probably clamped a little bit differently, but I've got the pieces of the two pieces of sheet metal orientated correctly. I've got my hinge in. Now I'm going to go through and make sure I got it good and centered, right, so that it's perfectly centered in between. And then what I will do is, because of my experience, is I will drill one hole, these two holes, these basically two middle holes. I will drill these and just place a rivet in there, and then I will drill this one and this one, basically the opposite ends, place the rivets in there, and that way I know that it's kind of in position. Then I will actually seat those rivets. That way I know this hinge is in the right position. I'll test fold it, make sure it still lines up and that, you know, all the edges line up once it's folded closed. And if it does, then I'll go through and drill the rest of these out. But that's my plan, that's my strategy, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. This is a prime example of why this is the most challenging part. So obviously I had everything as I thought was as correct as possible. Drilled my two holes, just got my little rivet sitting in there now, and as you can see, my hinge is completely off. Now fortunately, there's enough slop that I can move it to get it back into orientation, but that means the next hole that I drill has to be dead on accurate in order to keep this hinge somewhat straight. So this is the reason this is the biggest challenge in making one of these, is this, you know, is getting the hinges and the holes drilled as closely as you possibly can to centered and accurate, so that when your hinge folds up, everything folds up straight. Well, I got 4 rivets drilled, obviously 1, 2, 3, and the hinge still looks to be pretty well centered, so I think we're good. What I will do now is I'm going to go ahead and set these 4 rivets, that way this hinge is in place, and then I'll just go through and drill the rest of them and put my hinges in. So far I think this is working out a little better than the way I have done it in the past. I guess we'll see in the long run how it really plays out. But I'm going to set those and then start drilling some holes. I'm just going to time lapse all that for you. Okay. As you can see, that actually worked out really well. Actually, I think it worked out a lot better than methods I have done in the past, so I'm definitely going to be doing it that way if I have to make any more of these. But as you can see, got all my rivets in nice and clean. Didn't actually have to re-drill out any, which was awesome. And when it's all folded up, the edges all line up well. So I think that's going to work out. So now we have the first section. Oh, where's my other panels? Here they are. Hold on. Okay. As you can see, that worked out really well. Actually worked out a whole lot better than it has my previous attempts at doing this. So all my hinges, all my rivet holes lined up nicely. I didn't have to re-drill anything, which was awesome. First time that's happened. So I think I've definitely found a new method for doing this. And of course, when it's folded up, all of my edges line up, as well as they're going to. They're not, there's not crazy offset. So now that we have the first section done, or the first hinge installed, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do the next set. So we're going to make sure we've got these lined up, because obviously, your edges, unless you do super fine measurements and accurate everything, there will be an orientation to these. And so I want to, this goes here. Make sure I've got these. Nope, I think these are backwards. I think these go this way. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay, so because it's a 3 hinge, it's going to hinge there. It's going to hinge there. And of course, it's going to hinge here, right? So to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and do these two together. And then we'll attach the two bifolds together. So these are going to go like this. That way I know they're still in the correct orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then I will put the two together. The process is basically going to be the same, so no matter what. So I'm not really going to worry about filming that for y'all, but I think you kind of get the idea. I would definitely recommend this method over trying to sort of kind of freehand it, but I think this might actually work out pretty well. The 3/8 measurement gaps that I put in there that was nice and straight, kept them true. I think that's going to be exactly what we need in order to make this work and not have to re-drill any holes or drill out any rivets, heaven forbid. That's the worst. So I'm going to go and get this done, and then I'll let y'all know, or I'll let y'all see the final product once I get it all riveted together. There you go. We have made a wind deflector and a heat reflector. As you can see, it just, hinges out like this, or, accordions out like that. Obviously, when you're doing your hinges, make sure you keep all your panels orientated correctly so that, like I said, when it's all closed up, everything lines up. This one's not perfect. The top edge here is a little bit wonky, but, it'll open out, right? Let's do it this way so you can actually see. It'll go around a fire. That's what it's supposed to do. So this one's actually all done. Now you've seen kind of what goes into it. Like I said, it doesn't require really any special tools. An angle grinder, if you don't have one, a 4.5-inch angle grinder with a cutoff disc, that's probably a little bit unique. The hole saw for making the handles, but the reality is you don't have to have a handle. I mean, when it's all said and done, I just knocked all my rivets over, of course. When it's all said and done, you could just carry it like this, so you don't have to have a handle. The handle obviously makes it easier. So doesn't require any real special tools if you don't want it to. The biggest, trickiest part, or the hardest part is of course the hinges, getting those all lined up so that this is nice and square, and that's just because a little bit of a variation in where the holes on this end has a much bigger impact on the other end of the fulcrum, where the other end of the panel where it reaches from. So it's, it can be done. Like I said, the biggest part of the cost of these usually that I have found has been the materials themselves. Aluminum's not cheap. Obviously the thickness of the metal, the sheet metal, determines how expensive it is, but the truth is, for $100+ or so, maybe a little bit more, you could build yourself one of these. And from what my friend the first one that I made has told me, that it works great. Really, obviously it does a good job blocking the wind, but he says it does a really great job of reflecting heat back at him. He was using it when it was a little bit cold at night and said it worked perfect. So like I said, if you've seen one of these and you wanted to build one, hopefully now you have a better idea what it takes to do that, and hopefully it'll get you out in the garage and get you building on something. As I've said before, I'm a big proponent for learning and getting out and doing things and trying new things, and the biggest obstacle that most people have is just this sort of uncertainty or insecurity or just lack of confidence in their ability to do it. But if somebody else can do something, so can you. So get out there in your garage, get out there in your shop, whatever you've got, go outside, or even if it's indoor, if you're lucky and it's air conditioned in Texas, that'd be awesome in the summertime. But get out there and make something. If you've got something you want, get out there and put your bright mind to it and figure out how to make it happen. But that's a heat reflector, and stick around. I'll be doing more projects. I think the next thing up on my list is a welding table. I've got a TIG welder, and my old man gave me his old MIG welder. I've done some MIG welding with a cheap Harbor Freight, but he's given me a much nicer Millermatic 212 something or other, and so I'm going to set up a nice welding table that's portable. It's actually going to be movable. He got me a nice big slab of steel to put on the top, and I want to make it to where I can roll it out here in the middle of the garage and use it, or when I don't need it, I can push it up underneath my workbench over there. So I think that's going to be my next project. Who knows though, maybe I'll get distracted and see something shiny and go elsewhere. But now we've done this, like I said, thanks for hanging out. If y'all want to come check out the other stuff that I'm going to be making on this channel, I know I've got a couple other videos from some things I've done for my camper, as well as I think I've got a video from some work I did on my wife's Jeep. But I've got some other videos on the channel. Go check them out. By all means, if you want to, subscribe, click the like button. You know what to do. It's YouTube. I'm not telling you anything that you've never seen or heard before, but I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see y'all next time. Later.